Well, that episode certainly ratchets up the intensity. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Third episode of Tulsa King called Caprice, which I had to look up because I did not know what the hell that word meant, but it's a sudden change in emotion or mood or behavior, which sort of happens in this episode. We get a sort of a cold open coda, but it does lead to what's happening in the rest of the episode. But a raid is happening on the Dumont plant, which is a weed farm in Tulsa. And Stacy is there. She's one of the heads of the team that is conducting this raid. And in this raid, Mr. Dumont is there, being sort of held at gunpoint with folks kind of raiding in and surrounding him. He releases his dogs, and once he does that, he gets what I believe is he gets a message. One of the other members of this dispensary, this farm, come and sort of says some words to him. It seems like it's coded to everybody else, but it's clear that it gets a message to him because at that point he releases his dogs and then he blows himself up, and the dispensary is blown up. So it's sort of a messed up operation. Doesn't get anything what they want, but Stacy's kind of left with the mud on her hands in that situation. We then see Dwight going through his normal routine of going to the coffee shop and getting some coffee, and we see that old pony, that white colt horse that we keep seeing, that we saw a bit in the last episode. We find out that horse is known as the old pilot, and every now and then he just roams around the city. And Dwight asks, like, hey, did they just let him roam? And the young girl's like, well, sometimes the old folks or old horse doesn't want to be put out to pasture. And I can kind of get that. I can kind of understand that. It's sort of a alliteration. It's a little bit heavy-handed, but it's a way of saying, hey, Dwight has a lot of things in common with the pony that he as well has about himself. Taylor Sheridan is known for making things have symmetry or some allegories to what the lead character is actually also happening. One of the big things that happens in this episode is Tyson sort of speaks up for himself. He wants to do more, and he wants to kind of like come up with a 5-year business plan in this corrupt world that he lives in. And Dwight has to sort of check him and be like, hey, you know we're a criminal operation, like we're a crime. And Dwight is like, I don't think you understand that this isn't for you. And so Tyson is all in. Tyson's like, no, this is what I want to do. I'm aware. I'm a good worker. I can do all of this. Please put me in. He's like, I can be the capo. I don't know. And Dwight's like, you can't be the capo. And Tyson thinks it's because he's a black dude. Like, hey, yeah, the Italian person, you got to be Italian. He's like, yeah, that's part of it. But what Dwight's more so leaning towards is saying, hey, you don't have this in you. You're not a bad guy. You're not a good guy, but you're not a bad guy, like a criminal like that. So this isn't the world for you. Tyson's not really wanting to hear that. It's kind of Dwight's way of a little bit of fathering him. And for him, he always wanted to be in this life. But he sees that Tyson, there's more for him, and he kind of wants that for him. But Tyson starts mulling about and being very mopey and sad and depressive about the whole situation. They wind up going to this party that Bodhi's having, and in that party, Dwight sees that people are getting high off of these balloons that they're taking off of that nitrous oxygen tanks. Light bulb goes off in Dwight's head to say, hey, that's another revenue stream that I can partake in. And so he goes back to the bartender at the bar that he was at, who was clearly giving some vibes of like, hey, I'm willing to do some crime if you got some crime for me to do. And he puts a business opportunity in front of him and says, hey, I saw these kids getting high off of this tank, and he puts the numbers out. He's like, how much money can be made off the tanks? He breaks it all down for him. And my man's like, cool, what does it have to do with me? He's like, well, you're a restaurant. You can order tanks as much as you want without it really causing a red eye or a red flag. Nobody's going to really bat an eye about it, because you can just say you've added whipped cream to your menu. And he's like, I think I'm getting what you're putting down. So that is another business avenue that a business revenue stream that Dwight is now creating in a very short amount of time. He is seeing the big picture in the small town, but I think the small town, because he's trying to do so much so quick, is going to kind of come in on him really, really fast. Tyson picks Dwight up for his driving test. He's about to take his test. And he's ready for it to go. And Tyson's being very mopey. Dwight's catching on to it. He's like, what's going on? And Tyson's like, no, I know you're trying to say that I'm not good for this, but I am. I really want to do this. I really want to put forth my effort. And Dwight kind of says, I'm not telling you to do this because you wouldn't be good at it. I think you would be good at it. I'm telling you because I think you should be going to school. You should be going to college. He's like, I tried the college thing. It wasn't for me. They got schedules. They got grades. They got all this stuff. And Dwight goes into this great soliloquy that I think it's honestly kind of true. He basically tells them, like, hey, look, that's the point of college. College is literally, you're doing the schedule, you're doing it for 4 years straight, you're getting moderately to good grades if you can, whatever, but they're trying to see if you can make a routine and do a routine for 4 years. So all these jobs and whatnot, your degree doesn't matter. You can go to arts and major in theater and telecommunications, whatever the hell your major is, it doesn't matter. But you spent 4 years doing the exact same thing, punching that clock, going to your classes, doing things right. That job can now see that, hey, I can trust this person and I can put them in my business because they are going to always be there. Never really thought of it that way. And it's not 100% accurate because there are positions in college, like lawyers or whatnot, they have a different guideline. They have those rules, but it's not entirely wrong. We then get to see the driving test. And Dwight's doing pretty good. He's making these turns with his hands outside and not using a signal, but he's using the old hand signal. But he's doing fairly well with the test. And he's asked to stop and make a K-turn. And in that, someone makes an attempt on his life. He catches it, and so he puts the Paul, the driver's test administrator, down. He puts his head down, and he ducks. And then he goes on a high-speed chase with the car that tried to shoot him. Meanwhile, Paul has had a flesh wound, has been shot and is bleeding pretty profusely. And he goes on for a while, chasing this guy down. He's not letting it go. But he also is able to sort of get a partial play from him. That person who tried to make an attempt on his life eventually escapes, but Dwight uses the blood from Paul's head to remember the partial plate and put it in the window, which is fascinating. The cops detain Paul and Dwight. Paul's put in the hospital because he's got injuries. Dwight, they keep a hold of because they've ran his records and see that he's a made man. And Dwight is sort of giving a little bit of shit because he's like, wait, I'm being held or detained because I got shot at? Is that how things work in Oklahoma? Like, I don't even think that's a crime. Versus even in Oklahoma, I don't think being shot at is actually a crime. But they're trying to see if there's something else that's going on here. And it's at that point that Stacy, our FBI agent that he slept with, returns. And it sort of gets him a pass. Like, you don't need to stay here. You're not being held. And with the police, she just calls rank. It's like, hey, he's needed and wanted for a bigger thing. And she's like, will you let me know? I'm like, nope, don't need to know. I gotta tell you. And she doesn't. So they both leave. It's at that point, and then they go to dinner and have a nice little combo together. And we could learn a little bit more about Stacy. And we see that Stacy also sort of been banished to Tulsa in much the way that Dwight has. She's sort of damaged as well. It was a very good FBI agent. She was around during 9/11 and she did her job well. Didn't break, didn't have any issues. But then when Sully happened a few years afterwards, it sort of triggered her PTSD and she lost it. She sort of broke, had a mental and break. It seems like that may have had something to do with a little bit with her husband's cheating and breaking apart their marriage. But she was then banished to Tulsa, and she has been left there, which is she refers to as sort of the Siberia of the FBI. So you both have these two wounded kind of animals who've been placed here, not by their own doing, and who are now sort of meeting out and kind of having this very much, like I said before, this out of sight Karen Cisco, I think it was Jack Foley, I think was George Clooney's character's name, but like a very much they shouldn't be together, but they will be together, and they keep kind of ramming into each other. And I use that on purpose because they sleep together again. And then she's like, we cannot do this again, and he's kind of being like, sure, we won't do this again. And she's like, we cannot, and they're both leaving that room. They're both slipping out of that room, knowing that they are good and well going to do this again. That next morning, Dwight calls Chicky to see if Vince had anything to do with the attempt on his life. And he's just checking to make sure. Chicky doesn't take too well to that because Chicky's kind of like, Dwight, are you saying that I don't have my house in order? Like I told him to stand down. If you do what we said about that $100,000, all will be forgiven. Plus, you're making quite a bit of money out there. And I would be a fool to remove you off the board. And Dwight's like, yeah, that does make sense. Like, why would you take me out? Cool, well, give me some time. I got to see what enemies I've made out here. Dwight then goes to Paul, who's at the hospital with a bandage on his head. And a ton of flowers. A lot of people love Paul. Paul is loved. But he goes there and gives him a card, a get well card that has $10,000 in cash in it. And it's with that card and that cash that he is saying, hey, hope you heal up, take care of your wounds, but also, I need you to look at the partial prints of this. Like, ask some of your friends. Just like, you should call the police. Like, no. Shh, don't talk about the police. I want you to do this. And this is sort of that money to kind of make that deal occur. So he's going to have Paul look into what those plates are. And he does. While he's looking at the plates, Dwight and Tyson meet again. And Dwight's going to give him a severance package. He's like, here, look, here's your severance. Go on about your life. I can't have you doing this. And he's doing it in a way to protect him. He's like, I don't want you to be in danger. Plus, I don't want your parents worrying about what the hell's going on. That you bring that car home, and it's got bullet holes and all this type of damage. They're going to freak out and nervous. He's like, you let me handle that. I'm not a kid. I'm 25. I am choosing to do this. And he's like, okay. Just let you know that you've chosen this. No one has put this upon you. You've chosen this life. And at that point, Dwight's like, hey, I need you to go get me a new car. And we're not going to pay for the new car. Just go get me a new car and make sure that it is not black and not as flashy as this one is. I want to ride a little bit incognito on this one. So he does. He gets him one. And then he eventually gets the plate number and he finds the person who made an attempt on his life. And then he is stalking them. He is watching them move. He's watching them go from place to place and kind of following them. While he's doing so, Stacy gives him a call. And Stacy had been looking at the compound that got blown up, and she found that old stray dog that was out there, one of the dogs that he let loose, and she keeps it. Very Karen Cisco of her. Again, if you ever watched Out of Sight or the Karen Cisco series, you should. And then they're having a combo, and he's like, yeah, I took an old dog in. And she's like, that seems to be your pattern. You have a very pattern of taking in old strays, referring to himself, obviously. But it seems like at that point, she kind of wants him to come over tonight. And he's like, I can't. I'm a little bit busy. And that's when we see that he's following this person. And he follows them to their home where they're living the life of their family. They have a little kid there and whatnot. And the episode ends with them closing the door, and that is that. We all know what's about to happen next. He's about to rough that dude up and get some information. If not kill him, but he's definitely going to get some information about why it was that he was trying to attempt. And once he sees what he's attached to, sort of that unfolds a little bit. And it looks like with the dispensary that got blown up, the Dumonts, they're going to be another player that kind of plays into this. I think as Dwight starts getting bigger and bigger, more people are going to start trying to get at him to sort of eat the pie and sort of either share the pie or make sure that the pie doesn't get a split from them as much as you can. Plus, I do think that eventually, while Chicky likes to say that he has Vince under control, Vince is a hothead, and Vince is eventually going to try to end or get some type of retribution on Dwight. I do wish that Tyson kind of got out. He seems to be a good kid, and his dad seems to be very concerned for him. I do think at some point in time, Dwight's father, because that actor is a little too well known, I feel like he's lived a life Not as much, not as far into it as Dwight has gone, but he has lived a life that has gotten him close to that. He chose to back out and take this plumbing life. And I think he's thinking of it on the flip side of like, I need to protect my boy. So I think at some point in time, he's going to have a combo with Dwight face to face to be like, hey, look, my son's in, but I need to make sure that he's okay. So whatever you need me to do to protect my boy, I'm going to do it. And I think there's going to be a bond, a familial bond that happens between the two of them, and which is good. It will be good for Dwight because he doesn't have that connection with his daughter. This is sort of going to be the two of them kind of working together with him. I'm all in on this Stacy Dwight. Will they? Won't they? They shouldn't. Type of thing. A lot of whoop out of sight works for me. I keep going back to that, but that's literally the linchpin of that. If you see, there's an entire sequence of the two of them where she's trying to arrest him. And they're in the trunk of a car. It is played beautifully by Clooney and Jennifer Lopez. I'm getting those vibes here, and I kind of dig that. I think this episode handled a little bit better the tonality of going from comedy to kind of craziness to like what the hell type of action. I dug the meshing of that, going from hey, we're doing a simple a simple driver's test, like a mundane routine, everyday moment to oh crap, someone tried to kill me, and all hell broke loose. Fully invested in this series. I think Stallone's doing great. I think the supporting characters are doing fine. And I love how it's sort of um, shedding more and more light each week into sort of what is actually at play and who actually are the true bosses of this world or who are going to cause the most pain outside of Stacy, because Stacy's going to cause some pain. She's eventually going to probably have to choose which side of that line she's on. But outside of her, who's going to cause Dwight the most pain as being the foil for this season? What did you guys think about the third episode of Tulsa King called Caprice? Caprice. I'm probably butchering it, so I'm sorry for my Italian folks. But what did you guys think of the episode? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.